So the first thing we're gonna do is address our shallot. We have this little shallot right here. It is a type of onion. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the stem end and we're gonna trim up the root end after that. So take like the first inch off the top of our shallot right here. In the recipe, it says medium shallot. I would consider this a medium shallot. You can find ones much smaller than this, but there are larger ones out there. So at the end of this, we should have about 1.5 ounces of shallot. So see what I'm doing here with the end of the root? I'm just giving it a haircut, okay? For those of you who've been on stream, you've definitely seen this little trick before. I'm just gonna shave off those little brown rooty bits so they don't end up in our final product, and then we're gonna set that off to the side. Now with this trimmed up, we're gonna cut it in half through the root end, and then peel off that first outer layer of skin. All right, just remove that. All right, so after we've peeled our shallots right here, guys, we're gonna thinly slice these. And what do I mean by thinly sliced? 1/8 of an inch thick. So just take your knife, slice that down in like little half moves. So we just thinly sliced our shallots. Our next move is gonna be cutting our Kalamata olives into quarters. 4 tablespoons, AKA 2 ounces or 1/4 cup of pitted Kalamata olives is what we're gonna be using here. So Puttanesca sauce, guys. What is Puttanesca sauce? This is a very acidic, tomato-based pasta sauce. It's a classic, and it does come with a bit of a story. Puttanesca means the sauce of the whore. And in Italy, just like in America, prostitution was illegal. And so when you would say, I'm going to get some Puttanesca sauce, Puttanesca was the dish that was served widely in brothels. So the dish stayed around, but it was a bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, we're gonna go get some Puttanesca sauce. But despite its storied history, it is a classic and delicious. But it's chock full of Kalamata olives, capers, anchovies, tomatoes. Gets a lot of its acidity there from both the capers, tomatoes, and the olives. So we're just cutting our olives lengthwise right now to prepare for this. Quartering these bad boys down. So we're gonna need an equal amount of capers here. So I've got my jarred capers. Capers are juniper berries. So you guys know like what gin is made out of, but they've been pickled, so they don't have a piney flavor. If you guys ever have the opportunity, you got some leftover capers after making this recipe, a real fun way to use these as a garnish is to heat up some oil and pan fry them, and they pop kind of like popcorn. They like turn themselves inside out and they just get real crispy, and they're these crispy, salty, delicious little capers. I love putting that as a garnish on top of like veal saltimbocca. On step 4, we're gonna mince up 5 cloves of garlic. I got this fist of garlic right here, and 2 of these cloves are gonna be for our mussels, and the other 3 are gonna be put in our Puttanesca sauce. Okay, so you're gonna put this into 2 separate containers. Now, I'm gonna pull out 2 little bullets here. You might wanna do the same at home. If you've got small containers, I love these things. You can find these online, everybody. I call them a bullet because that's what we call them in restaurants, but you can just search under a metal ramekin and you'll be able to find these. I think they're 2 or like 1 3/4 of an ounce. To begin peeling our garlic, everybody, you saw that I just took a clove and I laid my knife flat over the top of it. You're gonna give it a pop with the heel of your hand just to break up that skin on the outside. Do that to each one of them, and then we'll peel off the outsides of these. Guys, on the bottom of your garlic cloves, you're gonna notice there's still a root right there. So you're gonna take, and as thin as you like, just a thin enough cut to take off that woody little end of our garlic. Remove all those. Toss those away as a garbage, the French for garbage. After we have our roots trimmed, the garlic's peeled, we're just popping it a second time to flatten out our garlic cloves. This doesn't really do anything special other than making it so it's easier to mince. You don't have to be chasing it all over the cutting board because it's still a big ball. And to mince, everybody, I've just taken my hand and I've gone from that side, that curled grip over here to the top of my knife, fingers raised. And then just plant your knife and move back and forth until we got pieces the size of a grain of rice. That's what we're looking for. I'm gonna give it just another pass or 2. And with all of our mise en place done for the sauce so far, we'll be moving over to the stove. So make sure that if you're cooking along with us, get the sauce pot out like we have over here. Top left of the screen is the pot that I'm going to be making our Puttanesca sauce in. Okay, so it's a little larger stock pot. And then as I said before, everyone, we are going to divide our garlic into 2 separate little ramekins right here. And gear up for our next step, everybody, which is going to be sweating our shallots and half of that garlic. So we've already split our garlic. We're gonna wanna go over here to the stove and heat up that pan to a medium heat. Center that. Put on a medium heat, and we're gonna add in our 4 tablespoons of olive oil to get that started. 4 tablespoons, 1/4 cup, 2 ounces of olive oil down there in the pan. And then once that's loose, because when the oil first goes into our pot, guys, it's stiff, it's cold, it's moving around like oil, right? Well, as we introduce more energy into the system, it will become looser. It'll start moving around like water. You might even get what some chefs term as a shimmer on the top, all right? Like little bands moving through it. And when it's at that point, that's when we're gonna add in our shallots. We don't want it to be too hot because we're not looking for color on our shallots. I'm not looking to turn anything brown. We'll give them about a minute head start, our shallots that is, which we have thinly sliced here in our little prep bowl. And then half of our garlic we'll add in about a minute after we add in our shallots. They've had the chance to soften up a little bit. I really prefer buying my tomato paste in the tube. Back in the day, I used to buy those cans. And it's like, 60 cents a can, 55 cents a can, so you don't really think much of it. But you only use like 1/4 of it most times. So this allows you to buy all the tomato paste and use all the tomato paste, just like a little toothpaste tube, okay? So we got our tomato paste, same thing with the anchovy paste. This stuff basically lasts forever. So we're going to cook up our anchovy paste along with our tomato paste here in a little bit. But if you don't have anchovy paste, or you just happen to keep fresh anchovies around, not fresh, but canned anchovies around, you can use those too. It's going to be the equivalent of about 4 fillets finely minced we're gonna be using. But if you have the paste, it's gonna be 1 tablespoon of the paste. Nice sweater, you like my sweater? I like my sweater too. It's got cactuses on it, cacti. It's very trendy. I bought a sweater from Megan and they had a BOGO deal, so I got myself a sweater too. It's real cute. I smell hot olive oil, which means we need to go in. We have our shallots over here. We're gonna toss those in. Just a light sizzle, and as I said before, we're gonna give those about a minute head start before we start throw in our garlic, because the shallots are gonna cook up a little bit slower than the garlic, and if we were to put them in at the same time, your garlic might burn before your shallots are totally sweat, okay? Get yourself like a rubber spatula. I really like these high heat rubber spatulas right here. Lots of olive oil. Welcome to Italy. Let's throw in our garlic, which we already did, because I'm just talking and not paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm gonna give it about another minute. Right now, we're on medium heat, everybody. We're on step number 5. We're sweating our shallots and half of our garlic. The other half of our garlic, if you're just joining us, we're gonna be using on our mussels. So the Peroni beer mussels we're gonna be doing, that's where this other 2½ cloves of garlic is gonna be going. And we're gonna add in our tomato paste and our anchovies, so get ready for that. We are doing our tomato paste, which is 2 tablespoons right there. Just gonna eyeball that. And then we're doing 1 tablespoon of our anchovy paste. Or if you have canned anchovies at home, 4 fillets, and you're gonna finely mince those. See how much easier the tubes are? Looks like some poo. Now, what we're doing here is caramelizing our tomato paste along with the anchovy paste. So I'm taking my spatula and I'm just breaking this up, making sure it has as much contact with the hot oil on the bottom of the pan as possible. You will develop a little bit of a fond here on the bottom, just due to all the sugars that are naturally inside of our tomatoes. Fond, that's F-O-N-D. It's French for foundation. It's a foundational part of your sauce. Now, that fond is gonna get lifted up when we add in our canned peeled tomatoes, all right? So for right now, you can see already that the tomato paste is deepening in color, going from, I don't know, like a fire truck red to a brick red. And that's just all that caramelization taking place due to the heat. Make sure that you're stirring this frequently, and with your other hand, let's get the tomatoes opened up. We want to cook our tomato paste just up to the point where you're like, oh, it's about to burn. So you gotta have some courage here at this step, because the longer that we can draw out the caramelization of our tomatoes, the deeper the flavor is going to be inside of our sauce. We can go a little longer. We can go just a little bit longer. All right, let's add in some of our tomato sauce, the juices from in there. And then with each tomato, I'm just gonna take and gently poke a hole along the side with your thumb so this doesn't just squirt out everywhere and get all over your nice sweater. But just crush these by hand. I really prefer buying whole tomatoes like this in the can because you can use them for anything. Let's get some of this mixed in before the rest of our stuff burns. There we go. I'm gonna add in all of this can of tomatoes because again, I'm making a 4-person batch of this, not a 2-person batch, which is the default setting for the recipe on the web page. And if you're just joining us, everybody, and you'd like to cook this at home yourself, hit !recipe in chat, and that'll drop the link here to our recipe guide web page that we've put together for you. Lists out all the equipment that you're gonna need to make this, as well as all the recipe steps. It even functions as a nice little shopping list. So it has check boxes on the recipe. So as you move throughout the grocery store, you can just check off the ingredients you've already gotten. It's really handy. Go! Come here, you son of a gun. But then we'll toss in our capers and olives, our dried herbs, and then we're just gonna let this simmer for about 30 minutes. All right, last chunk of tomato and some excess juice going in. Give it a stir. We're gonna season it up as well. I really like just the rustic, big chunks of tomato in here. Some people don't like chunky tomato sauce. I'm not one of those people. You know, some textural differences, textural preferences. I get it. I understand. So if you'd like, you can use tomato sauce for this if you don't prefer the large chunks like I do, but that's up to you. Now, we're gonna add in our olives, capers, garlic, and herbs after the tomatoes go in. And you're right, Jesse, I did skip over that in our recipe steps, didn't I? Stupid, stupid. Okay. We've got our oregano, we've got dried basil back down here on the board. So we're gonna be using 1 teaspoon of dried oregano and 2 teaspoons of dried basil here in our sauce. Look at me, guys, aren't you proud? I'm measuring and everything. Now, if for whatever reason you prefer to use fresh basil for this, that's totally cool, but just remember that dried herbs of any kind are much more potent in their flavor because the flavors have been concentrated due to all the water being evaporated out of them. So just use like double or triple the amount of minced basil if you're gonna be going fresh, okay? If you would like to garnish with some fresh basil, which is how it says in the recipe, you're just gonna need your fresh leaves and we're gonna thinly slice those across and that'll just go on the top to finish, okay? You can totally use dried basil though in the sauce and you're still gonna get that same amount of flavor. It just won't have that beautiful pop of green. We're just gonna stir all that goodness into our sauce right here. And then we're gonna hit it with some salt and pepper. A couple of pinches of salt, a few grinds of fresh black pepper. Two pinches should be good. Gimbal cam's acting a little weird. But if you guys are too intimidated to try out mussels, please just watch what we're doing here today. It's not that hard. I know it's a strange ingredient and sourcing it can be difficult in certain parts of the country and around the world. I don't know, unless you have a reliable source for mussels, it can be a little scary cooking those. But if you've got a good source, but you just don't have the recipes, hit !recipe in chat. That'll take you over to our webpage and you can make these Peroni beer mussels that we're gonna be doing here this afternoon on stream. I wanted to take the mussel class, but I'm very sus of the mussels we got here. That's fair, Snake. I like I said, I only buy my fresh seafood at Whole Foods because I know that the cities they go into, they contract with the local seafood purveyors. And in Denver, that's Seattle Fish. Whereas places like Safeway or King Soopers and the like typically have their own supply chains that they are getting cheaper seafood through, but it's also lower quality. Plus, people in grocery stores like King Soopers and Safeway aren't buying things like mussels a lot, so it's very hard to find things that are fresh and haven't gone bad at that point. I've tried a couple of different like regular grocery stores other than Whole Foods, and I've always been disappointed in their mussels. Although you can find in the frozen section of a lot of grocery stores nowadays these pre-packaged mussel like dishes, and they're all frozen. They've already got like the butter and the herbs and the salt all in there ready to go, and you just toss it in a pan and heat it up for like 5 to 6 minutes, get it unfrozen. those are pretty good. Those are passable for, you know, not having fresh mussels available, if you can find those. We've already got our large pot of boiling water. If you did this earlier here with me, we're on step 9. But if you haven't, you're gonna wanna get yourself a large stock pot with some water. 3/4 of the way full is gonna be just fine. That's what we're gonna be cooking our spaghetti in. But you're gonna make sure that this is heavily salted and it has a little bit of oil in it for our pasta water. The salt is just to season the pasta as it cooks, and the oil is to help keep it from boiling over. So I'd say, I put in like 3 tablespoons of salt. It should be salty like the sea, all right? There should be a lot of salt in here. Not all of it's gonna get transferred into your pasta as it cooks, but it will be nicely seasoned if you do it right, okay? Let's get some olive oil in there too. There, a little bit of olive oil here, everybody. It's gonna break up the surface tension of our pasta. As more starch is released, the bubbles form, and the oil is gonna help keep those bubbles from boiling over the top of the pot, okay? We're gonna bring this to a rolling boil on high heat, and when that's at a boil, we're going to toss in our pasta and cook it. Step 10 here for our Mussels and Puttanesca class is going to be cleaning and debearding our mussels. So we've finally gotten to that point, everybody. Now what we're gonna need for the mussels is going to be our beard, only one of these. We've got our fresh PEI. PEI stands for Prince Edward Island. They're from up in Canada. These are Canadian mussels. If you've got your sauce already on the stove, guys, and simmering away, let's cover that real quick. We don't want to evaporate too much of our liquid. This should just be a gentle simmer here with our Puttanesca sauce. All right, so that can go on. We have right here our mussels. Now, our mussels have a flat side and a rounded side. These are mollusks, all right? And we need to debeard them or clean them. The hair that's sticking up off of our mussel, all right, that's his beard. And as I told everybody earlier, but I will repeat for you, this is the beard. It's made out of keratin, just like our hair and nails are. But this is what they use to adhere to each other along the side of docks or along the ocean floor and stay together in little clusters. But we want to get rid of this. So you don't want to eat this. And the easiest way to do it is just take and pinch with your thumb and forefinger, give it a wiggle and pull it out, all right? Now, we also want to make sure that all of our mussels are alive. And typically when you debeard your mussel, he's going to clam shut. You can tell your mussel is living because they are shut. Now, this little guy over here who's hanging out and open, let me make sure he's alive. So he's going to be a little, hey, wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. And if they don't close, that means they're dead and you need to get rid of them. Hi, hello, wake up. Oh, he closed up, okay. So we're just gonna go through these over at the sink, throwing away the ones that don't close, debearding the ones that do. That guy's closing. You just scrub the outside of your mussels. Now, once you start pulling off that beard, everybody, you need to remember they begin to die at that point, which is why we only debeard our mussels right before we're about to cook them, okay? It makes it so much harder for them to live when you've like ripped out a part of their body and then you go to store them in the cooler. So don't clean these in advance. Oh no, you do not want a mussel going down the garbage disposal. That will not end well for you, so make sure that doesn't happen. So here's the beard on this little flat side. We're just gonna take and pull it out, all right? You just rip it out. All right, we've debearded our mussels right here. They're all nicely cleaned out. They're scrubbed. They are all still alive because, as you guys can see, they're closed. So with those boxes checked, we're gonna put these off to the side. I'm actually gonna toss these back in the cooler. We've cleaned and debearded our mussels. Now we're gonna preheat our oven to 375 degrees. That's step number 11 here. Cut thick slices of bread that are about 2 inches thick. But the reason I cut them so thick is because while I want the outside of my bread to be nice and crusty and delicious, I want the interior to be a little bit soft so it has the ability to sop up some of the liqueur that comes off of the mussels. Liqueur, what I mean by that is like, that's the cooking liquid. It's not stock, it's not jus, it's liqueur, okay, when you're talking about mussels. Now, I'm not gonna just cut this at 2-inch segments all the way along. I'm gonna do a bias cut. So a 45-degree angle with my knife. This will just give us more surface area for our bread, and then at like 2-inch intervals, all the way up. Nice thick pieces of bread. We're gonna be tossing this with about a 1/4 cup of olive oil, some salt and pepper, and then you need to get yourself a sheet tray. I have a wire rack right here, but you can just line it with parchment paper down the bottom. We're gonna bake these in the oven once they're all cut up and tossed, okay? All right, let's get our bread into a bowl. We're gonna douse this heavily with our olive oil. All right, just pour the olive oil. Wow, that's a lot of olive oil, chef. You're damn straight. You're damn straight. Our bread is well doused with the olive oil. We already thickly sliced the baguette. I'm skipping over steps here. We just tossed the bread with olive oil. Now it says to toss with the S&P in the bowl, but I like doing it with the, I'm gonna change that a little bit. I'm going to just toss it with the olive oil, lay it on the sheet tray, and then salt the pieces there on the tray, okay? Nice hefty pinch. That's like 4-finger pinch. All 4 fingers in there. And then let's just, We'll toss these in. They're gonna cook for about 10 minutes. Again, just a little bit of color here on the outside, still soft on the inside. That's what we're looking for. Now we've already laid out our slices on a sheet tray lined with parchment paper. We're gonna bake them here once our oven has come up to temperature. So now we need to salt our pasta water, which we've actually already done, and we've added our ounce of oil. We're gonna start cooking our pasta right now, okay? And we're just gonna put that in our rapidly boiling, heavily salted water. It's got a little bit of oil right there. Hey, thanks. Hey, thanks. All right, cool. Very nice. What we got? Maggie. Maggie, stop giving our money to Jeff Bezos, okay? He's getting 50 cents out of that dollar. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna move our sauce that's over here on the stove to a different burner with a better camera angle so that we have our mussels front and center. I'm gonna make sure to keep our heat on low underneath the sauce so that it continues to simmer. We can just let this simmer out until we're ready to serve our pasta. Step 17 is gonna be clean and thinly slice the leek. Got our leek, all right? Now, we're only gonna be using about this much of it. Think of this as like a giant green onion, okay? It's also a very dirty giant green onion. A lot of sediment accrues in the different layers of your leek. So let me show you how to deal with that real quick. We're gonna trim the root end off the bottom here, and then we're gonna split this in half, okay? Lengthwise. Take your thumb and separate the layers. You can see this dirt we already got going on here in the middle of our leeks, so we want to rinse that all out. Just peel it open. Run the water down into those different layers so you can get rid of this sediment.
Logan, don't panic, don't
yes,
panic.
Sir. Yes, sir. I'm trying not to panic. Thank you. Thank you, Gordon. Yes, Chef Ramsay. Now we're gonna thinly slice our leek, about 1/4 of an inch. So starting at one end. Put that in a little prep bowl. What does leek taste like? That's a great question, Nikki. Thank you. A leek is an onion. So it's gonna have a similar taste to like a large green onion. So we've got one small leek thinly sliced after having been rinsed just like this. We've already minced up the garlic that we did earlier. So our next step is gonna be sweating our leeks and garlic over here on the stove. So I've got this medium sauce pot. It's very important that this sauce pot has a tightly fitting lid, all right? Now, if you don't have a tightly fitting lid, you can totally use some aluminum foil and cover that, but you wanna make sure you're not letting much of that moisture escape around the edges because we're gonna be steaming our mussels inside of our beer and our leeks jus. We're gonna give it a little bit more olive oil here in our medium pan, let that come up to heat, and then we're tossing in our leeks. Just like we did with the shallots though, we're gonna give the leeks about a minute head start and then add in our garlic. So see how that pan was already preheated and our oil has become loosened already? It's moving around like water, it's not cold like oil. We should get a sizzle when we add this. Yeah, we do. We do get a little bit of a sizzle. Here, let me get that mic down there. Ooh, ow, ooh, that's hot oil, fuck. All right, with that minute head start, our leek's already beginning to soften up a little bit. We're gonna add in our garlic. So how much beer are we using, Chef? We're gonna be using 1 cup, 8 ounces of our Peroni Italian lager. You could use another light style beer like this. A Heineken would work if that's all you can find. What's another? Stella Artois would be good for this. Just a light beer, nothing too flavorful. We are going to toss our bread, our toast points, crostinis, whatever you want to call them, into the oven. Thick sliced baguettes doused with olive oil, salt, and pepper. Here we go, 375, 10 minutes. In go the mussels, in goes our beer, and we're gonna bring that back up to a simmer. I'm gonna turn up my heat just a skosh, and then grab your lid, give it a stir, add a little bit of salt to this to season it all up. So let's do a nice 3-finger pinch right here. Cover that tightly. And then we're just gonna let that simmer. Once it's come up to a simmer, should be about 2.5, 3 minutes. What we're looking for here, everybody, is that all the mussels open up. Like all, when I say all, like 98% of the mussels, because sometimes you get that stubborn one. If you get to the end of your 3 minutes and the majority of your mussels are not opened up, just continue to cook them until the majority have. Most of them will be just fine, they'll open up, but the ones that don't open up, you're gonna want to discard those before you serve them, okay? I'm not gonna open up the pot because I don't want to let out the heat that we've got contained in there, but I can assure you it is simmering away. So some of our mussels have already opened up. I'm just going to pluck some of our parsley right here. You de-stem the parsley because you don't want the stems in here with your garnish. Guys, make sure that you have a strainer set up in the sink for when that pasta comes out. We've probably got another 3 or 4 minutes on that, at least on my end. But just make sure you're pulling that out and checking it. We're just gonna mince up our parsley a little bit here, guys. And then we got a plate. We got to get back over here to the stove because our mussels are done, okay? Let's serve them up. The thing I really like about mussels is it's a cheap appetizer. It's something you're gonna pay a lot of money for out at a restaurant, but this cost me $5 a pound. This is a pound of mussels sitting in here. We baked this, that it's crusty. Ooh. Crusty on the outside, but still a little soft on the inside. That way we can sop up some of the liqueur. So let's pop those in there. Ooh. We're gonna pour the liqueur right over the top right here. Oh yeah. Liqueur, just the jus that comes off the mussels as we cook them. Serve them right there. Now, once it's drained, everybody, you can go right back into the pot. Now, while your pasta's still hot, guys, hit it with a little bit more olive oil. That'll help keep it from sticking together. Yes, please. Yes, please, yes, please. We've got our Puttanesca sauce that's been simmering for about 30 minutes. This has tomatoes, capers, Kalamata olives, anchovies, some tomato paste in there, but it's a very acidic sauce. It's highly flavored, guys. It's really delicious. It's very simple to make. Let's give our mussels a taste, all right? So with the mussel, what I like to do is scoop it out with a fork, dip some of that bread, get some of that bread dipped in the jus, right? And then put your mussel on top of there. Yeah. I've not made mussels all winter. I think that's a pretty stupid decision, tasting these now. I learned a lot about mussels and shallots. Good, Puck. I always want you guys coming here to the stream and walking away with something that you can genuinely use and has taught you something in the kitchen. Like that's the focus here. Recipe-based, food-focused streaming. You guys are always complaining that I never eat my food on stream because I'm usually like, okay, here's the plate, see you later. So we're gonna taste a little bit today. All right, well, we're just gonna slurp it. ASMR, there you go. I mean, just as good as I remember. Winner, okay, fine. Jason, thank you. I didn't know if you were still hanging around. Bomb, baby, thank you, sir. All right, so we'll see you back here on Ingrediology next time, February 16th, for those delicious churros that we were just talking about with the Mexican spice chocolate. Everybody be safe, stay warm, and say hi to Nicole for me. Peace and love.